Hey guys, so this is the 20th day of the 60 days of 5 layers of AI video. And how we do this normally is we just, break down every single important part in AI. Basically, we've handled layer 1 and we're on layer 2. And this is our 20th day in the entire series. And it's basically our 10th day in layer 2 as well. So what we basically do here is, rather than all the fluff and all the hype, the AI hype online, and where you see a lot of things, I break down every single one of them into a 60 days series where I split every single one into 5 layers. We've worked on layer 1 and we're in layer 2. We are almost done with layer 2 actually, using a tool called make.com, and that is what we're using to build all our automations, and that's what we're using to build all our automations. And how we do this is, I have this resource page which I create every single time to put in every single detail about what I'm going to talk about. So we go through this in step, because most of the time I get so focused on a particular part I forget. So I put this together, and you can also follow it while you watch this video as well. So what we want to talk about today is about error handling. And to be honest, if I want to just break this thing down, I'm going to give more like a very detailed summary on how all this goes. Error handling to me is more like a error handling to me is just like a procedure you put in place. These are like directives which ensures that in any case your AI, which ensures that in any case the scenario you built on any platform, be it make.com, anything, or any other AI automation platform, it ensures that these automations, these scenarios do not break. And if in any case it does break, it has a way to pick itself back up. So what I use basically, what I use mostly is what I'm going to explain. So I'll just show you the one that is probably most important and the one I use most of the time. Basically, though we have all these things together, and when it comes to this, it feels like a lot if I start to explain all this, because most of these error handling models are things I've not used before. I remember it was day 16 when I was explaining about a bunch of things, and I also explained about the error handlers, and we're using the retry. There are various error handling directives out there, and the basic way we do this is we just over on the module and you had an error handler. It's as simple as that. Now there are various error handlers out there. To explain how this works, there's just basically 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 for me to explain. So I'll explain it briefly and give you an example of how to use this, and the one that you might likely use most of the time. Because to be very honest, I've not used most of this. In most cases I've only used 2 of them, and I use one often, and I also use one, the error handling model, for every single one of my projects. So basically the first one we have here, the first error handler here, is the skip. What does this skip do, and what does an error handler do in the first place? An error handler, like I did here, I added it to every single one of the module you see here. If it's your first time here, this is a project that we've been building. We've been building this since, I think since like day 15. Yeah, we've been building this since day 15 or day 14 basically. You notice I added some modules to every single one of our connected module here. So I've not added to these 2. These are fallback. I could still add it too, and let me just do this, just do this. Yeah, it's as simple as that. So why did I decide to add this? Every single one of these modules are important to us because we believe that we are connected to their services probably through a token, API, or a webhook. Now we understand the fact that it is possible for their services to break. I mean, it's possible for any service to break. It can be probably a timeout. Anything could happen that could cause a particular service to suddenly malfunction. And in any case this happens, we want to ensure that the client's business and every single thing is still going to go in operation, is still going to work very well. So what we decide to do is to ensure if it breaks, we had something that it is almost like a fallback, but this time around it's not a fallback. It's almost like, I would call it a backup in a case. So we have like a backup in place to ensure that if any of these services suddenly in a day have any issue, we are able to keep the data that was supposed to pass into this and what we try it again. So most of the time I use this error handler. I don't use a bunch of all these that we see here, and to be honest, I don't really think you might need that, unless if you need that, or if stated specifically by your client, or when it comes to the condition of the business, you understand that you need to use that instead of using this one. But most of the time I would just rather use, because every single thing I need to do, this can handle it clearly. So now to explain on the 5 error handlers that we have here. The first one is the skip. What this does, to show you through all this, we've been building this once again for a couple of days now, and this basically gets our leads from Tally. This is our trigger module. It gets our lead from Tally, passes this into the AI, which is Grok. You can use Gemini, you can use Claude, you can use OpenAI as well. Now it passes it here, which this reads it and interprets it and gives us an answer, which is either alt, code, or worm. It gives us this answer and we route it to different conditions, which is alt, worm, and code here. Now we created something which I call a fallback. The fallback is basically saying if it doesn't satisfy any of the above conditions, you need to what? Come here. And how do we create a fallback? I've talked about the router, right? How we create a fallback is we create a fourth one here and we just set it as a fallback, as simple as that. So the way we also make this to recognize that this is alt, worm, and code is we set a filter in place. You can see the filter here. If client is, this is just a label that you can name it anything, hot. So that's just to let you know it doesn't matter anything you put there. So far you understand it and it's your project. But if it's that for a client, you should state it very well. So anyway, we have the results, and the result is actually coming from Grok itself. It's coming from this. So if we get anything here based on the condition we've set in place in the prompt and the constraints, if we get an opt, it's going to pass through here. How does it get through? If the result says opt, it's going to, we are using a filter here with a condition that states it needs to be exactly opt needs to equals to opt. That is basically saying 1 equals to 1. As 1 is equals to 1, it should not go through. So when it's odd, it's going to pass through into this and follow this route. When it's warm, it does the same thing, follows. When it is cold, follows here. When it is neither of them, it comes here directly. So that is how that works. Now remember, we also did something extra where we talked about the other type of the filter, which basically us using a filter inside a module. Now most of the cases that we've used a filter inside a module is when we want to update a particular detail. When we want to update a particular detail, we have the updates. I have this removed already. Anyway, we have the updates module. We have the updates module, the update action module. To use that, we need a search module, which is this. This is search action module of Notion, where we are able to search for whatever details we're looking for, pulls it out and updates it. So that's basically what it does. Now the unique identifier that we're using here is the name, but on a normal case, most of the time the unique identifier being used, the emails and phone numbers, because this cannot be the same for every single person. But most of the time your name can be the same. Anyone can be Daniel, anyone can be David, anyone can be called similar names, right? Basically. So, but we use this for an example to test one more thing. What did we test? We had to test our iterator and our aggregator. So we worked on this yesterday, where we talked about iterators and aggregators, and I still have a single thing here. So basically, we tested that and we saw that an iterator basically takes in one input. It is from the diagram itself. That was how I understood right from the beginning. I started this, how to explain this itself very well, because I had to explain to myself before I was able to understand it. So you take in one array and it splits it. It takes in an array, but this, since we are searching for multiple, we got 4 names or 4 bundles, so we take the whole bundle with one array and we are able to split it individually and process it over this AI, which sends it here. Now what happens here is it takes in every single one of the bundles and merges back into one array once again. So an iterator basically takes one array, splits it to be processed, and an aggregator takes every single bundles that has been broken down and merges back to, so that you can send it at once and it can be used once. So there are different types of aggregator. Once again, there are numeric aggregators, there are array aggregators, there are table aggregators, and text aggregators. From the name, you will know what they are probably being used for. In most cases, this is used for text, this is used for tables, and these are used for arrays, and these are also used for numbers most of the cases. So we're able to test run this yesterday and we had something nice come out from this. So now we're going to talk. I have to go over every single thing there because I needed you guys to understand what we're working on before how we're going to use this directive here. So this directive here, I think I was starting with since we have an error handler, it's not going to connect, so let's just leave this and add a new error handler. And the error handler, once again, we're adding is a skip. What does a skip do? A skip basically skips and discards the bundle that caused the error, used to prevent scenarios from stopping when some data isn't essential. What this is basically doing is saying if an error occurs here, or if an error occurs, let's pick up what can be very important to us right from here, which is honestly I just see like, why do we have a skip? Why do you have a skip? In most cases you could need a skip, not really use this, but there are some cases when some things are just not important, right? However, I would rather not just, I will just make it important and probably pass that data somewhere else rather than using a skip. But if you ever need to, you need to understand that what a skip can do once is going to keep doing it multiple times. Meaning, if we decide that at that moment whatever we're working on here was not important, anytime you still are using the skip, it's going to continue that way, and you might likely have a lot of issues on your data later on. Using a skip is basically saying if an error occurs, I don't care, just skip it. But you can assume that anytime another error is going to occur, it's going to skip it again, while you are supposed to actually undo that for real. So that is basically what a skip is. If an error occurs, skip it. That's what it is. So the other one here is retry. This is what I'm using. So what a retry does basically, it saves, what a retry does basically saves failed bundles to retry automatically or to manually review it, and you use this for temporary issues or errors you like to fix yourself. Now, why I like to use this, which then it was not retry, it was break. So why I like to use this most of the time is because in this case I can be getting a lead, right? If I get a lead in, something just happened. Probably at that moment Tally has a server error, or probably let me assume Grok has a server error. And all this, when I talk about server error or probably something happening, it's almost clear for it to happen. You need to understand that these companies have a lot of for them to have built their companies to this point, they have a lot of fallbacks in place to ensure that the system is still running, though might have to use probably might offer lesser quality rather than having to just shut down completely. I believe we call this fault tolerance. We call this fault tolerance, where in any case, even if there's any issue, there is a technique in computer science where we were taught this, and what it does is it can degrade the system, or it can degrade the quality of the system, or probably the way it runs or anything, or the server itself or anything, but it still gets to work, or it might not just work as effective, but at least it's still on, right? So most of these companies have all these techniques in place that, I will be very honest, it's not likely, unless there's a huge crazy thing that happens. Let me say, just something crazy happens. I don't want to jinx anything. That is the time, something that might let them go off for hours, or probably even for a minute could. But generally, if you think about it, they will not go down. But we still have all this in place, because we can't say anything can happen. It can be just a minor server issue that might make it go off. It might be just a mistake. So to avoid all those things, we just put all these error handling directives in place. So for this, when it comes to retry, I already explained that what this does basically is it saves the data on make.com. Now, this became a slight issue when I had a particular health related client. Now, because it has to save this, it means it's not following, in quotes, HIPAA compliance, because a lot of health clinics frown against having the data of their clients exposed or anything. So when it comes to cases like this, you need to be careful when handling clients like this, because when it comes to some industry, HIPAA compliance and SOC and many other things is very important. An example can be in health, in law, and various other. So what we ensure we put in place is we ask, is this something they want? I've been able to understand that when it comes to especially the health industry, I have to resort to using a platform called, it's also like make.com, and anything, Keragon.com. So Keragon is like the make.com, but it's targeting just one industry, the health industry, rather than make.com targeting every single person. So this is the number one HIPAA compliant healthcare automation platform. Now, I've told a bunch of who have taught AI automation as well that they should go into this, because to be very honest, this is just an emerging platform which anyone could actually benefit from. Because to be honest, if you could find a niche and focus mainly on that, you could even make a lot of money, more than people using make.com or anything. You could make a lot of money. And I've had a couple of clients reach out to me both on Upwork and off Upwork because of just on itself. So when it comes to this, I could say anyone who is related or probably interested in focusing on the health industry and offering their AI automation services to them, you can check this out. Though there's no free plan to build, but if you're able to understand how to build on make.com, I'm telling you, it's just very easy. It takes probably less than a day to understand how to use this. The main thing I'm going to mention about these AI automation platforms, Zapier, make.com, Keragon, now I'm going to add that to the list, and anything, is the company itself. That's the difference. But the main idea behind it, the foundation behind everything, is still automations. So if you know how to, or if you understand how to build here, and you're not just a beginner on make.com, you are more like an expert on make.com, I'm going to say you should be able to build on every other platform as well, but you need to pick one at the end of the day. And what you will have noticed from here is that I pick make.com more than even anything itself, because I noticed that this is more, to me, visually appealing, and I could use this for the businesses of my clients, and it's just very comfortable. That was why I prefer make.com over anything and various others. So basically, to just keep on explaining more on all this, is when it comes to retry, it just keeps the data. How does it keep? Now, when you understand how make.com works, you know make.com pricing. You see this, you'll be able to understand where it keeps it. Now, most of the data that comes here are in very low sizes, so when it comes to the storage, you don't need much. Anyone using a plan like this, just the pro plan, okay, let's start from this plan. you see that the free plan gives you, I think that should be okay. Wow, the main should have it somewhere here. So it's 7 days. Okay, yes, data transfer. So you're allowed to use 5 gig, blah blah blah. Alright, so when it comes to this, you can see this is how much maximum file size. Oh, sorry, rather this is it, not the data transfer. I mean the maximum file size. It's the 5 MB. I think I should be using the one of this. Yes, I should be using this because of the plan I am on. But when it comes to this, when I was using the free version of make.com, this never exhausted. I never exhausted when I was building. So this is probably enough for you for whatever you're building at the moment, and this is probably enough for anything out there to this, because it depends on the level of inflow of leads or the level of inflow of operations and data and storage you need to use. But this is basically the storage. This is where whatever you are doing here saves as well. You could also understand that it's not just this, but there is a module we have on make.com that is like a data storage. Anything you do there as well is also saved. Everything pile ups to what this can carry. So if you use that as well, you're going to exhaust this. So depending on whatever plan you are on, you need to know when to stop. You need to basically know when to stop. You need to know when to upgrade. And yeah, I mean, it's just as simple as that. So when it comes to where it's being saved, basically explain that this is the 5 MB size, which means you can save as much as you can if you are building something. I'm pretty sure if you have something heavy, your 1000 credits would not even be able to get to that point in the first place. So no, you don't need to be bothered about this at all. So now one more thing is this retry. There are a bunch of process you need to do when it comes to working on this. I believe I've done it already. That's why I don't have to do much. Let's return this back. I think I really do like this. So when it comes to this, it just saves it, and you can also set the number of retries. That means you want it to, if anything comes up or if anything ever comes up, you want it to retry 3 times. Now over that 3 times, how many interval do you want to put in between? You want to put a 1 minute interval in my case, or you can put in, let me say, 4 minutes interval, depending on whatever you're working on, and to see, probably what you need to do. This are minutes, right? So this is 15 minutes. 4 minutes should be 240, right? I think 240 minutes. That is 4 minutes. That is 4 hours rather. Alright, so basically you can see how that is. So when you set all this in place, it just ensures that every single 15 minutes error, anytime we have an error, it counts 1 and it counts 2, 3. That is, we have 3 errors now, 4 errors or something like that. As it keeps piling up, you'll see the numbers right on top. It's different from this. It looks like this, but it just counts as 1 and 2, just with a normal color, not the red warning sign that we see here. So basically that is how you get to know that you have some unfinished scenario or some unfinished run inside, which you need to confirm to know what's up. So here, this is the time interval for it to try it again, and it's definitely going to try it again. So this is basically about this. Now the next one I'm going to explain is resume. Now the resume skips the error and continues processing the bundle. So that is how this works. If use if in essential, or if you provide substitute values. This resume basically is telling you if in any case, for example, what can we call a substitute for module here? Every module here is very important. That is the thing. But in any case, we can't use the AI right now. But let's assume there's a module like an example based on what I used here. I mentioned the fact that if what we have here in the first place, if what we have here, the AI has probably an issue, and what we want to do is we want to ensure that the whole scenario still runs without even the AI. Let's unlink this, and we could just apply the. Now what this does basically is it's going to tell you, it's going to tell you, okay, this is data error. Just when you type in the error, no? So it's basically you giving it When it comes to the results, is you telling it, okay, when we have this in the 3 parts, make deterministic, blah blah blah. So hold on, just tell it I want warm instead. Alright, so I have to take a little bit of rest there. Okay, so when it comes to this resume, what we basically are here, I think I was here, this is the results. So by just giving it a result saying, now this is the same result that I've gotten up here. An example, this is a 1, and what we're using is, for us to have the condition rather, this is what the results. So that same result is what we are taking and we're turning it to 1. So what is happening here is basically saying, if in any case an error occurs, what you are going to do is just pushing a 1. Why are we pushing it a 1? So that, because when we look at the situation that we are in, we'll be able to reach out to the person. Because when we look at what we've built in place, we built something that made it possible. Sorry, I used a code. This is a 1. So we built something that made it possible for an auth lead to book a call with us immediately, while a code lead will be sent a free resource, right? Now, a warm lead is actually really the only person we are reaching out to ask for more questions. So when you understand this, that's where how you understand why we are using a warm, because we are still going to reach out and we will understand this person. We will know which condition it's used to give us a warm in the first place. This is actually this is very nice, because in this case, it could even be one of the most important for this type of scenario, because in this case, it means that it is possible for us to still reach out to the person, so we could just leave there rather than having just a. So now I'm going to test something very quick. You can see it's not possible to use 2 error handlers on a module. It's just not possible. You have to let go of one to use another, basically. So that is for a resume. Resume is just, you are adding a dummy, you're just adding something that you think might be the right thing, and you give it that result. It's like you are creating a result from air, but you give it that result because you feel like that might be the best thing. Now this just gave us something that works for this particular one. If you were in another scenario, if another module entirely should have given us something different, let's try this module. I will pick up the resume. You can see it's giving us array instead. This is a different one. It's giving us something different. So it gives you something different, an option that works differently every single time. Let's try this and you see what the resume gives us here again. You can see it's giving us something. It wants to fill in a dummy content of what you predict. Probably if any error comes in, just send this instead. Just do this instead if any error comes in. That is what it's basically doing. That is what this is. So you can see it as an extension. It's just like it's what we call, I think I was explaining that in fault and in fault tolerance, and that's what they call something like a graceful degradation, and that is basically what is happening here. So it still is working, it's working, right? But it's working because we gave it another option. We gave it something like a fallback, so it can refer to that and use that data instead to complete the scenario or to complete whatever you are trying to do there. So when you understand that, you get to see how that is being done. Now the next one I'm going to make use of, this. Let's see which error handler is next. So we have the commit, save changes to acid module and stop the entire scenario run. The module results in source and no. Okay, you know what I'm going to do? Rather than this, I'm going to just read this and show you guys what this does basically. So what a commit does is, it says it stops the scenario run, the entire thing. Use when you don't want to process anything in a run after an error. In which case might we want to use this? We want to use this at the beginning. Rather use this at the beginning, because I believe that if an error comes up here, that means the error is going to affect every single thing. So I'm going to use a commit instead, because it's going to stop the scenario and continue this. So let's use comments for this and save. Yes, it's going to just stop this. If anything comes up, an example of an error coming up might be a case where we are using how should we, let's see, which case can we call this in, because we already have a filter that is stopping any form that is not the correct lead intake form. So I'm trying to see which case we might need this. If it's a wrong webhook, it's going to stop by itself. So I mean, in this case, this webhook module already undoes its own problem itself. But you can imagine other scenario where you won't have something that stops itself and it's still going to keep running. So this is basically just going to stop the entire scenario and tell it pause. We need to know what is going on, and that is what this is doing basically. This is what's going to stop the entire scenario. Nothing runs. It's going to alert us to check it. It's as simple as that. So the next one I'm going to talk about or make use of is, let's use this instead. Zero runtime model is the rollback. Now, what does a rollback do? A rollback reverse changes to ACID modules. Now, I think I might have to explain what the ACID modules and various other. You would have noticed this as well. Now, ACID modules, let me see, the entire scenario run. The scenario results in an error and no further modules are processed. So this rollback is almost like this as well. It's almost like this. So when it comes to understanding where this works exactly, there are cases where a rollback is not going to work. An example is when it comes to services that requires transaction. That is where a rollback is best and it's going to work. An example is a data store. It works best in a data store. One example of where it doesn't work is a Gmail. So we can assume you want to use a rollback for a Gmail, and you've sent an email and you're expecting it to revert back, because a rollback is basically going back to the past of a particular state of a module. Or the scenario is going to go back. So, but you can imagine you already sent an email to someone. How do you revert it back? It's not possible. So these ones do not require transactions, meaning what? It's not possible to the rollback, because it's not going to work. So when you understand this, you see that there are some conditions and constraints here as well. Well, basically, I haven't really had a need to use a rollback personally. So I can bring up more use cases than this, but what I do know or what I understand is that a rollback can be used to revert back to the original. And in most cases, you can use this in, an example is a data store. You should be able to use this somewhere else. In most cases, what you can just do is to test everything out. So I can say the main task I'm going to give you now, not to take too much of our time here, is I put a very detailed task here, which you can do. In what you've built already, I want you to run this multiple times using when it comes to using an error handler, basically, in conclusion, is that you need to know the right place you're going to use your error handler. You need to know when is very likely an error might occur, and that is where you get to use your error handler. An example you can see, I use this in just this because I figure out that in any case an error happens here, what it needs to do is to just stop the entire scenario. You need to work on it, not use a retry. We're not using a retry. We're going to stop it and we're going to be able to check back. When it comes to graph, we need to give it a dummy answer where it still gets to work, right? Which we use one, and we are using basically the best option we have here, so we can reach out to the person. So you can see that we're able to understand not just what using this error handlers, we're able to understand where exactly to use this. But there are many cases where you have to also deploy that. This is being used in the wrong place, so I'm going to unlink this, or I might just as well just delete the entire thing. So yeah, now that's not all there is about error handling. There are many more things you need to know, especially when it comes to save changes as well. So especially when it comes to incomplete executions. Most of the time when you see, for example, the break, and not just the break, every other one of them, when it stops, when it has an error, you meet them in the incomplete executions. Now guess what, when it comes to the break, which is the retry now, it's called retry rather than break now, you see it here and you're able to still initiate it to run again. So this was the amount of times we had issues when we were running some of our projects. So in this case, we could call it back. We could call it back. We could retry. We see it. So able to only retry it again and see if it works this time around. So this is basically where I can say we're having our, like I said, incomplete execution, like an history of bugs of what did not work. So we can try them again and see if it's going to work this time around. It's not like you're debugging and you want to test the data that trying to pass through to see if it works. So I'm not going to do today, the day 20. I'm feeling a bit down. I apologize if I'm not able to break this down as much as I should have, but I just knew I needed to show up and I needed to really make this video so I don't miss out any single day anymore, because it's already becoming a lot. Yeah, so basically you can go over everything. If you need more explanation on this, I could make one more video to ensure that I explain some parts that you need to understand more on. And to make this better, I would say you should also check here. You could just consult AI and ask it what error handling make.com and how to use them. So when we use this, just example, you can see the overview of error handling. This is from make.com directly. You can see 5 error handling directives: the ignore, the resume, the break. Break is now called retry. It has been changed. It's now called retry. We've seen resume, we've seen commit, we've seen rollback, we've seen ignore as well. So every single one of them, this is just a plain or basic explanation of how it is. So if you need a detailed breakdown on this, I could make more videos, and probably I might have to look for more examples. So if you enjoy this video, remember to share, and I will obviously make more videos once I take a little bit of my time here. I'll make more videos, and yeah, I do hope this was as explanatory as it could be. And yeah, that's every single thing I have here. I mean, there's nothing much to explain than this, rather than just a bunch of explanations here. And one thing I noticed is that I put all this together in the first place. When you read through, you should be able to understand even more than what already explained on the video, because I added examples here already before I started making the video. So yeah, talk more. See you guys later.